All right, hello everybody. Time for our next demo. Coming up next, we have a serial skill collector, ex-moderator of R3D printing, and current admin of the largest 3D printing Discord server. She's best known for her posts on 3D printing, her experiments with 3D fabric printing, and her novel mechanical keyboard designs. She loves blending fields of interest, skills, and eras to form new and creative projects, which you can check out on her website, billyrubin.info. Please welcome to the virtual Remoticon stage, Billy Rubin.
Hello, thank you for a lovely introduction, Bradley. Yes, so anyone who is watching on Twitch, I would love to hear why you signed up for this talk and what you're hoping to get out of this session. Chuck that in the chat because I am watching it and I'll try and answer any questions as we go along too. Before we get too stuck in, I just want to do a little acknowledgement of country, which is a little ritual we do here in Australia at the beginning of any meetings of people. And as part of it here today, I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land from which I am joining you, which is the Turrbal people, and acknowledge that not only are we learning here today, but that this area has been a place for the exchange of knowledge since the dawning of humanity. And I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners from all the lands from which everyone is joining here today, and pay my respects to their elders and wise persons, past, present, and emerging. Cool. So yes, as Bradley said, I am Billy Rubin. In the daytime, I create learning assets for large companies here in Australia and New Zealand. And by night, I moderate many communities related to 3D printing because I love 3D printing. And I like to blend my two fields. So I have made many learning guides for 3D printing, and they've been quite widely shared. So particularly these three here, these posters have been shared by Hackaday and Adafruit, and there's one of them in this issue of Make magazine this month. They are some of the top posts on the subreddit, and they are pinned to many, many 3D printing communities. And I get a lot of questions about how I make these and the process behind them. So that's why I thought I'd put this little talk together. Yeah, so I have lots of friends who make various things, and I see a few struggles. So I know some people who have created various software projects, and they have lots of people asking them questions that are actually answered in their documentation, and it's obviously quite frustrating knowing the answers are out there and people are still coming to you for the answers. I also have a few friends who've made really popular projects, and they have a really growing community behind them, and they're finding that their new users aren't as self-sufficient as their early adopters, and that they need a lot of hand-holding. And yeah, it's becoming quite a burden. So I sort of put this together to try and answer some of those questions and yeah, kind of help people along the way. I won't be covering specific tools for making content because there are so many. So if you have any questions about what you should be using, please hit me up on the socials. I'll link them at the end, and we can talk through it sort of on a case-by-case basis. But what I am going to be giving you here today is a really robust structure for formatting content. And you can use this structure no matter what media form you're using. So videos, written guides, podcasts, PowerPoints, manuals, whatever you're making, if it's designed to transfer learning from one person to another, it will benefit from this overall structure. Yeah, it's just really a structure that ensures that you're ticking all the boxes for your learners so that they can engage with your content in a comfortable and easy sort of way. And it also means you can use whatever tools are already familiar to you. So if you already know how to edit videos or you already know how to make PowerPoints, you can continue using those and just using this structure that I'll be giving you. So yeah, not here to sell you on some miracle app or anything like that. Yeah, it also applies to any length of course. So I've used this same structure for videos lasting less than a minute, and I've used it for workshops lasting weeks. So it is really versatile, and it's something I use as a foundation for any learning that I create. And yeah, so without further ado, I will jump into the actual what it is. So it basically is chunking your content under these headings. And as we go through, we ask questions relating to each of these. So in the why section, we ask why questions like, why do this? Why read this guide? Why is this knowledge important? Why do it in this way? In the what section, we ask questions like, what are we doing? What do we need to know? What is this? And in this format, and, etc., how and what if and what next. And in this format, we're just making sure we're ticking all the boxes for our learners as we go along. So I might start with the why section and the kinds of stuff we put into the why section. And they are, why learn this thing? And it might be that what you're showing people solves a certain problem. Like, for example, why learn to change a tire so that you can get driving again and get where you need to go. It could just be that what you're teaching is really cool. Like, you have a really awesome maker project and you thought other people might like to make it as well. Or, why learn to bake a cake so you can impress your friends, It could be that what you're trying to show people is a better method in some way or another than others out there. So why use this specific method for making scrambled eggs? Because it makes them lighter and fluffier. But pin down why they should read this guide. Another important point in this sort of why section is why listen to me? And depending on your audience, this may or may not be applicable. Like, potentially you're making content in a space at work where people already know and understand and trust you. So this section of why listen to me, maybe not as important. The same if you have a quite established YouTube channel, people probably already trust you. But if you're meeting people for the first time, as I am here today, it's important to let them know where this knowledge is coming from, that you're not just pulling it out of thin air, that you have some experience behind it so that they can kind of trust you a bit more. Adults rather, come with a lot of preconceived notions. So it's important that you portray where you've come from, which is why I did my little introduction and why I told you a bit of my backstory at the beginning. But all of this really boils down to why spend the time to read this guide or watch this video or whatever it is? Why invest your time in learning this thing? And that really rolls back to this simple truth, is that adults learn in order to do stuff. Children will kind of soak up any learning you present to them. It's kind of how we're programmed. But generally, adults have a goal in mind. They want to be able to do something with the knowledge that they're gaining. And so they know that their time is precious and they want to know that they're spending it wisely with you. It's valuable, and they want to make sure that what they get out of this learning will actually help them do that thing that they have in mind. So really, this why section is almost like your sell. It's to get people to engage with your content so they actually spend the time with you. We talk about attention spans getting shorter and stuff, and to an extent that's true, but I think it comes from there being just so much content available. So we actually have the ability now to be very choosy with where we spend our time. So make sure your guides are quality, make sure it includes this section. If you're struggling to get people to read your content, and you have guides and you know they answer the questions that you're getting, but you're struggling to get them to actually read it, it might be missing this section. So it's really, really important. It sounds really superfluous and wanky. It'd be lovely if people just engage with things and read them all in full. But this is the hook. This is like the thing that will make them read the rest. Cool. So that's sort of the why section and the purpose of the why section. In our what section, essentially, we ask what-based questions. What is this? What are we doing? And here's where you start to provide a really high-level overview, a sort of roadmap that guides people as to what they'll be learning. And it is really just a roadmap. Like, you can't see all the pebbles or every step of the way, but it's a general direction that you're heading and the sort of key points along the way. This is really important to provide people with because it helps them to follow the instructions that you'll give in future. It helps them to kind of link all the concepts they're learning together in some sort of cohesive way. Because without this, it's quite easy to get lost and end up on a tangent or just not where you want them to be. So you really want to give them a nice, clear overview, a nice structure to follow. Save the detail for later. Don't swamp them. Only give them what they need. And utilize sort of graphics and diagrams and stuff quite heavily in this section because it adds a lot of meaning when people can sort of grab a picture of something. We, as humans, learn most naturally by seeing and doing. So if you can add that dimension of visuals, even video, then people are more likely to understand where we're going. Oh, I will put these slides up. I'll put them up on my website. Yes, I'll put them up on my website in about an hour or within the hour. I'll do that. Sorry, I should have done that before. But yes, I'll put the slides up. So yes, what section also contains what do I need to know in order to be able to do this? So these are any sort of key concepts, it's a chance to clear up any misconceptions, which again is really important because adults come to the learning table having existing knowledge, and not always is that knowledge correct. So it's your chance to sort of clear up any misconceptions and also cover off any assumed or prerequisite knowledge. So you don't necessarily have to write all the prerequisite knowledge, but you do have to say it's assumed that you know how to do X in order to follow this guide. And even better, if you can actually link to guides on how to do X. You don't necessarily have to write those guides, like say you're writing a Python tutorial for beginners, but it assumes you already know how to use PyCharm and how to set up a project for yourself. Just really important to say those things and potentially link to some guides that show people how to do those things, because otherwise, again, they might get lost and stuck and not know where to go from there. So yeah, important to kind of cover off any prerequisite knowledge. Yeah, so that's sort of the what section. Yeah, what questions? What do I need to know? What is this? What are we doing? So that overview and any sort of key concepts and assumed knowledge. And then we jump into the how. And this is a bit that people probably most often think of when they think of making some sort of learning content, because it's those sort of step-by-step instructions. The step 1, do this thing. Step 2, do that thing. So yes, it is the core of what you're trying to teach people. But without it being wrapped with these other pieces that I've been talking about, it's really easy to lose people in this spot or not gain their attention initially. So yeah, this section is very, very important, but make sure it's wrapped with these other sections. And when you're working through the how section, be very, very clear. Don't leave any steps out. Don't assume any knowledge that you haven't already alluded to in that what section, but still be very concise. People won't read anything or watch anything if it looks overwhelming. If it's going to take 7 hours to watch your YouTube video, they're just not going to. It makes it look too hard and too scary and they'll bail, or it just makes it look like they're not spending their time wisely. So be as concise as possible and systematically order it, preferably in a sort of sequential order. So like do this, then do that, then do that. Yeah, if you find in this section that you are going on a tangent, don't stop yourself and split that tangent out into its own piece of content following this structure, and then link to it from here. Try and keep it as concise as possible and chunk up your knowledge into topics. Try and keep one learning goal per learning asset, whatever it is, video, guide, poster, whatever it is. Try and keep one goal per thing that you're making, because you can always cross-link them. You can always round them up into some sort of curriculum, like a getting started page where you link to various guides, but try and keep one per item. So yeah, if you think about the getting started sort of example, you might have one on how to download and install the thing, running it for the first time, some cool different things you can do with this software, and then like a troubleshooting guide. That might be your getting started. But each of these are links to pieces of content that each follow this structure that we're going through now. Similarly, in this how section, if you have any reference material, like say there's a great big long table of a whole heap of different numbers that all relate to each other, if it's something quite sciencey, link to that. If it's short, put it in the text, but if it is pages long, link to it. Kind of obscure it just a little, because it can look overwhelming. And as much as we'd love people to just take things at face value and recognize their importance, a lot of people will just be overwhelmed by the sight of that. But having it as a link to something where they can go to it if they need it is the way to get around that. So it's still there. People who like detail will still be able to access it, but you're not going to overwhelm people. I know it sounds kind of silly and a little bit psychological, but it's important. Also in this how section, if you are in a situation where there are many ways to skin the cat, i.e. there are lots of different ways to achieve the end goal, you want to just provide at least one fully working method. Like say you have to go into a file and edit it in some sort of text editor, say use Notepad to do this, because people who don't understand all the different kinds of software they could use to make a text, to edit text, will get lost. So provide at least one fully working method for your audience. Yeah, it's important. Please, if I'm going too quickly, or if anyone has any questions, please check them in the chat because I am watching. Thank you for posting the link, by the way, to my website. So yeah, now we jump into the what if or what next section. And in this section, we start to ask, what if something goes wrong? What if I get stuck? And the answer to those really is where to go for help. And that might come in the form of troubleshooting references. It might come in the form of communities and forums and cool people that they can follow. And it might come in the form of how to get in contact with you. So I like using a blend of these sorts of things generally, because yeah, different people will prefer to read a guide versus go and ask someone. So yeah, try and fit as many as you can in there. But yeah, really do. It's very important that you give people a place to go if they get stuck. Yeah. And then in the what next section, this is a chance to sort of inspire people and actually encourage them to use what you're teaching them, because using it will help embed it for them. They'll actually start to, yeah, gain the knowledge and put it to permanent memory if they're actually using the thing. So the way to do that is by sort of talking about what they can now do now that they have this knowledge. So yeah, like baking cool cakes or whatever, you know, like tell them again what they've got now, what the value of the thing they've learned is, and really encourage them to test and tinker and try new things. It's really, really important for really most people is to take that knowledge and do something with it, be creative with it, and further their own personal goals with it. Yeah, so talk about what ideas have yet to be explored. If you're writing a guide, probably you have some concept of these ideas, because it's rare that we explore every idea that we come up with while we're learning something. So just give them some of these, throw them to the audience and say, hey, this might be something cool to try. And then talk about what they can learn next, what they can now build upon now that they have the knowledge that they have. I've seen some questions come through. A comment. I like to take the opportunity to teach newbies something new, such as the term text editor, by wording it as user text editors such as Notepad 2. Yes, beautiful, definitely. That's a really great way of doing it. Just provide them an example of a thing that works. And yeah, the people who understand what a text editor is will know that they could probably use Visual Studio or whatever else to do it. But yeah, give them an example of one. How do I approach revisions when I already have a draft of the guide? Oh, that is a good question. I might come back to that one at the end, but oh no, we could probably cover it now. So how I approach revisions really is the guide working? If it is working, I don't revise it. I might update a brand or change some colors or something, but in terms of the content itself, I don't really change it. If it's not working, I work with the audience to really understand what isn't working about it, like where they're getting stuck, and what they wish. And even people who have got it working, ask what they wish they knew, because sometimes that can reveal places where your guide is currently not strong and needs a bit more work. So that's probably how I would approach, yeah, revising existing content. Question. Hackaday is also a lot about what lessons you learned along the way. While this might clash with the purpose of a guide, it's very important for Hackaday members to learn and get inspired by this. When building a Hackaday IO page for Resistance, how do you incorporate this tangent knowledge? That is a very good question. So I would probably, if you're going through like a project teardown or like a, I guess I would make the distinction between sort of like a diary of how I built this project versus I'm giving you this information with the goal of you learning. So if it's like a diary breakdown of my process for making this thing, like a project kind of overview video, or yeah, like a lot of posts on Hackaday, I would sort of talk about those things as they happen. This was an issue for me and this is how I resolved it. If you are designing something purely as a sort of learning piece, as in I want to teach you how to do this thing, I probably would build those learnings into the content itself. Like remember to do this thing, not that thing, as you go, so that it's just a smoother process for the learner, so they don't go down a path of following what you did that ended up in the wrong thing before they come back and do the real thing. Yeah, so just kind of skip that step for them and be like, yes, do the right thing. So yes, I guess it depends on the kind of thing you're creating, but really, really good question. Let me know if that answered it. If not, I will keep trying. So yeah, that is the basic structure, is that why, what, how, and what if, or what next. And really, really simple one, quite easy to remember. It's only got 4 steps, so that's why I'm giving it to you here today. I use it in every piece of learning I make. And so I thought I would give you just a little walkthrough of one of my posters and how I utilize this technique in it. I will send you a link to the full screen version because it is quite teeny tiny on my screen. I'm not signed into Twitch. Oh no. Oh, well, I'll put that on my website too. It's on my website, actually. If you go to the shop page, there's a link to the full res ones. You don't have to buy them. There's an IMGA link to them. So yeah, there's a link there. Sorry, I should have signed into Twitch. Anyway, yes. So yeah, there's a distinction between write as you go, sort of documentation of a project, versus creating something with the intention of transferring your knowledge to someone else. Yes, I would make that distinction. But thank you. It's a really good question. So yes, here's one of my posters. I'll sort of read out the important bits, I suppose. So yes, in the why section, this is this bit at the top, and it talks about how this is a poster for how to level a 3D printer, and when you're learning to 3D print, this is something that every newbie pretty much has to overcome. It's a thing a lot of people struggle with because it's quite a difficult concept to explain in text. And that is why I made this poster on Reddit when I was moderating Reddit. This was every second help question we had. So this poster was sort of born out of that need. And so yes, I was quite familiar with the problem and the kinds of things that it could solve. And yes, so the beginning is my hook. It talks about all the problems that can be solved by fixing your leveling. So it talks about plastic spaghetti and poor adhesion and ugly first layers and warping, and that leveling is really important because it is quite literally the foundation of a 3D print. So this is my hook. This is where I'm saying this is why it's important and why you should read this guide. In the what section, it's talking about the like what leveling is and isn't, because there's some misconceptions about what it is and isn't. And then it teaches you how to recognize what a good and bad level looks like. And I've utilized pictures and graphics here because they do add a lot of meaning, and they really help people understand and remember and embed that learning. And again, it's our most natural way of learning, is to see and then do. So any photos and images and diagrams that you can include, awesome. And you don't have to, you don't need super special software to do it. I will admit a very shameful thing, which I'm probably going to blush about, but I make most of these posters in PowerPoint, just using shapes. So you can do it in really simple tools. You don't need to be a whiz in Adobe Illustrator or anything like that. Yep, Canva, awesome. Yep. I'm sorry, I'll just read over these comments. So we've got one, there's documentation on how to step-by-step accomplish a project and a guide of how to orient yourself to get going with it. Yeah, beautiful. I would call them different things. Do you have to be an amazing artist person to make something that looks like that? No, I personally don't think so. I will actually put some videos up on YouTube because you can get some really neat looking things with some really simple concepts. If you're really interested in the more designy side of things, then I would recommend looking into Gestalt. Gestalt. It just provides some really fundamental foundation sort of like rules, golden rules really, for how to structure visual content. Yeah, so I would look into that. I don't have too much time to spend in it today, but I think I will do some YouTube videos on it because it seems like people are pretty keen to learn this sort of stuff. Yeah, so in our how section of this poster, this is the step-by-step guide, instructions labeled 1, 2, 3, 4 in order of when we should be doing them. Also in this how section, I'll note that I have some little headings here, And the headings are like abbreviated views of the text below them. And this is sort of important to, again, just to allow people to sort of skim the content and build that roadmap. So they built the roadmap sort of in what, but then we start to really add a few pebbles in, a few steps along the way with the titles, and then we're really drilling down and they know every single step in the text below it. So yeah, adding headings helps people follow the content. Then in the what if, what next section, we have mostly in this poster further help because it is designed as a troubleshooting guide. So if these steps aren't working for you, here's some things to investigate. And then really in the what next section, it's happy printing for this one because it's just like, go forth, you can do the thing again, have fun. So it doesn't have too much what next because yeah, this one has a very heavy focus on the troubleshooting side of things. So yeah, that is a little demo of the overall format. So I will go through this. I'll just show it one more time because that's it. Why, what, how, and what if or what next as our segments. The only last little final thing I really want to touch upon is like where to start. So if you are in this situation and you don't have any content existing or your current content really isn't working, where do you start? Where do you go forth? And it's really a process of like human-centered design. You really want to be working with your audience to find out where they are struggling. Don't assume you know what they need to know. Find out, ask them the questions that come up most often, like things that would be in a frequently asked questions, flesh those out into robust guides because that's where people are going. That's where you're losing them. That's where they're going wrong. And ask your users, even the quite competent ones, what they wish they knew when they had started. These kinds of things can build your sort of titles or your topics for your learning content. So yeah, focus on the needs of your people and work backwards from there. Yeah, if you are really starting out and you don't have too much of a user base, focus on what they need to do most immediately. So a getting started guide, the basics of the thing that you're trying to show them, start with those key concepts. And yeah, my only last kind of warning is just keep it as concise as possible. I've said it a few times, but really try and be as elegant in your language as possible. Imagine you're writing it all in tweets, like try and keep it really, really concise and make sure you only got one learning goal per learning object, whatever it is, video, podcast, whatever. Try and make one goal per thing and just make lots of little ones because people quite like knowing they're just getting what they need and they don't have to skip through a big long waffle about stuff that they're not interested in. So yeah, break big things like getting started into little chunks. And yeah, that's kind of all I had to say today. Yeah, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. But this is where you can find me. And I will pop the slides up for this onto a blog post on my website momentarily. It won't take me too long. So you can grab all these slides if you like. And yeah, thank you so much for joining and for having me here, Hackaday. It's so exciting because I am in Australia, so I don't get the chance to come to Supercon normally. And so I feel very blessed and very excited to be here. So thank you so much. Yeah, have we got any questions in the chat? Oh, just people saying lovely things. Thank you. But yeah, if you have any questions about this, if you're starting to play with it and you come across any hurdles, please do reach out to me because I am really happy to help. If you have any questions about what sort of software you should be using to make things, feel free to reach out about that too. And yeah, I am more than happy to help in any way I can. Thank you, everyone. You're lovely.
Thanks, Billy, and thank you everyone for watching. I hope you had a great Remoticon.
Enjoy. I am loving making this series, and if you are too, please support me on Patreon so I can keep making more. Top supporters will appear in this list of legends.